Many years ago, I quite enjoy that I can say this, Holly and I just so happened to be hiking through the foothills of the Himalayas in northern India. That's fun. I think it's fun. Well, we got to experience this, and on this trip, this was many years ago, about 15 or so years ago, right? It was actually for a job interview to be the chaplain of an international Christian school in the foothills of the Himalayas in northern India, northeastern India, yes. And it was beautiful. One particular moment, we got to go out of kind of the school grounds. It's like a whole campus where it's like a boarding school, people live and everything, so we got to go out. We took a 45-minute hike to a local village where we had heard, one of our friends who lived there, that a local Christian school had been started in this village for like 4 or 5 kids. There's just believers there in the town, this little bitty village of like 40 people. There's like 3 believers. They want to start a school for their kids to grow up in a godly way. Great. Let's go encourage that, see that, meet these brothers and sisters we've not met before. Visit went great. On our way out of the village is what I want to talk about. The contrasts was just glaringly beautiful and ruinous at the same time. We're walking out, and you just can't help but notice your eyes in those foothills just go up. And they're up before us to date. The tallest mountains I've ever seen were 3 or 4 25,000-foot peaks. And you're just in awe of the sheer size. You're like, are those clouds? You're like, no, that's snow. Oh my gosh. That's a mountain? It's gigantic. You don't quite get that until you're in the presence of them. It was like a 3-day hike away, and it's still that big right there in front of us. But eventually, your eyes come down, right back to, we're going to start walking on the trail again. Eyes came down. There's a hut, like a little shack, where clearly a family had lived on the outskirts of this town. And it was dilapidated. It was all kinds of impoverished looking. But then we kept going. We saw in the backyard of this shack was what looked like about the size of a dog house. So like this big, like Snoopy, the house there. And it was ornate. Clearly it had been lavished. Money had been spent on this little, what I thought was a dog house. And I asked our friend about it. They saw me going, and like, that's where they live? What is going on here? He said, that's not a doghouse. That's their temple where they worship a snake. The snake's in there. And I was just like, can we go see the snake? They didn't let us, and that would have been culturally against the rules. But notice the contrast in view. 2 of them just stood out as we're walking away, just disturbed us to all get out. One was not only the grandeur of these alpine, majestic peaks that we're looking up at and then seeing the awful image of idolatrous worship and of all things, the worship of a snake, thinking this is not the way it should be. But then the contrast of seeing the poverty of this family and seeing them spend their resources in this manner to lavishly decorate and make this ornate temple for their snake god. It's like, this is really not the way this should be. It was incredibly disturbing, to say the least. But as we come to our text this morning, the reason I tell you this is there's a far more disturbing moment. This is the second most disturbing moment in all of the Bible that we have now arrived at. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 to 7. If you received a bookmark on the way in, you see the text on the back, the headings that we'll be working through, or it'll be on the screen above me. See the first heading, the tempter. Look at verse 1, just the start of it. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. Questions abound, don't they? When we hear this, questions abound, and we don't know the answers to them. These are mysterious, and every opinion you've heard on these things is probably just speculation. Not all created equal. For example, who is this serpent? Where did he come from? How did he get into the garden? Why is he crafty? Does crafty mean evil? If evil, which we know it's going to come, where did evil come from? How did evil get into God's serene setting in this temple garden with this first man priest and his wife? Well, among all that we're not told about this serpent, notice in verse 1 is helpful for Bible study, guys. Don't linger on what we're not told. Linger on what we are told. Look there at verse 1. We learn two things: the serpent's character and the serpent's origin. The character comes first. It says he was crafty, but not just that. Crafty, more crafty than any other beast. We learn. And crafty, we get images, perhaps other words, synonyms come to mind. Cunning, clever. For you Harry Potter people, this is the Slytherin house. And you know that this can be used for great evil, but it can also be used for great good. Cunning and cleverness and craftiness is not always a bad thing. But of course we know with these words, images, and other words come to mind: sneaky, sly, shrewdly deceptive, which is, of course, a horrendous thing. So from verse 1, we're positioned as readers of Genesis 3 to be on the lookout for the serpent's craftiness that we know more than any other beast. Something's going to happen from this craftiness. Notice next we see his origin. Where did the serpent come from? The serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field. See it? That the Lord God had made. The serpent, therefore, is made, meaning he is a creature. The creaturely nature of the serpent is in view. You know what's not in view? A serpent or evil-like cosmic God figure who's always been in existence even before the beginning, as if prior to Genesis 1, there are two gods, the God that we know and love and Satan, and they're forever, all eternity past, all eternity future, in some cosmic battle and clash. That is not the view here. Before the beginning, there was only God, no rivals, no competitors. Then, on day 6, all the creatures are made, one of whom is the serpent. But then another question comes to mind. How is it that the serpent talks? And why does Eve entertain a talking serpent? Is this normal for her? Makes me want to go revisit my sermon last week. Remember point 2, I said this is not Narnia? Well, maybe this is Narnia, if there are talking serpents. But why? What's going on? Again, we're not told what's going on. A serpent talks, Eve engages in discussion. Sin enters. But because there's so much opinions, and many of you have sent me texts this past week and going, what is going on here? What's happening here? I'd like to know before the sermon to think about it. So when the sermon happens, I can be ready for small group and even for discussion after church with other people. So here's what's going on. I think it is difficult in Western culture, you should know, to make the separation between what the Bible teaches on these things and what Western culture has gleaned from John Milton's Paradise Lost. They're not the same. He had an idea of what he was going for here, and as great as this work is, there are many details here that we think are in the Bible, and we go to the Bible, and they're not there. Specifically, an angel that nowhere in the Bible is given the name Lucifer, but is named here Lucifer. At one point, this angel did fall. Think Isaiah 14, perhaps Ezekiel 28 might refer to this moment. But at some time, that angel did fall, and take other angels along with him, became the devil and was clearly allowed in the sovereign providence of God to enter into creatures to deceive Eve. It has to be the case for that to happen. You then ask, well, when did this angel become the devil? I want to say sometime between chapter 2, verse 25 and chapter 3, verse 1. There's white space there. So there's time for that to happen there. It's the only time I think it's possible for something evil to have entered the world. But of course, we know later on the great serpent, Leviticus 11, all snakes are declared unclean because they crawl in their belly. That's the curse the serpent's going to receive soon in this very chapter. And way on, Revelation 12, the great serpent or dragon, Satan, is there at the end causing all kinds of destruction. All in all, there's a ton of disagreement here, tons of opinions. But when it comes down to it, honestly, it doesn't really matter who this serpent is and how it got the way it is and what kind of incarnation it is from the devil. You know what really matters? What the serpent says. So let's focus on that next. In our second heading, the temptation. Look at the rest of verse 1 all the way to verse 5. He, the serpent, said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden'?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that's in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.'" Do not miss, church, that the first words in the Bible about God coming from someone else other than God are the serpent's words right here, which I want to then say the first sermon in the Bible is from the serpent. The first doctrinal teaching in the Bible comes from the one who is the father of lies. And we would agree that all too often, many sermons ever since have followed suit. They don't take God's word as it is, but they take it, twist it, and all they want to do is tickle your ears and grow huge, massive congregations. In a sense, then, it's as if Satan presents himself here as an angelic, astute theologian, ever so eager to tell Eve all about the things divine. Well, what did he say? Look at verse 1. Did God actually say, "You shall not eat of any tree in the garden"? It's a question. Never does the serpent say, "Hey, you should go eat that fruit. Go ahead. Go ahead. It's just right there. Just grab it." He asks a question. How sneaky. How crafty. He could have done it different, right? He could have been crystal clear about his intentions. "Hey, Eve, come here. I want to tell you something. Come here. Hey, you see that tree? You know the tree that God forbade you to eat? Well, you should eat it and bring ruin upon yourself, death into all your descendants, and sin and misery on the whole world from here on out." Yeah, God's wrong, I'm right. You should listen to me. Go ahead, eat up. He didn't say this because, of course, that's not crafty, that's not subtle, that's not sneaky, that's blatant and ridiculous. No one would buy that lie. But he came crafty, and he posed it as a question, the first question in the Bible, to be exact, which threw just enough shade on the Lord and his commands that encouraged Eve to begin doubting God. But Eve begins well. right? Let's not throw our first parents under the bus quite yet. We will, and us along with them, but don't do it right off the bat. Eve begins well. She catches that the question's wrong. And so she responds, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. We may. God said we could. As often as we desire, we can eat of any of the trees except one. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She was right to catch this trickery in the serpent's question, but she was wrong to continue speaking. She did not finish well, though she began well. God said, she tells the serpent, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that's in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Notice, on the one hand, Eve adds to God's commands. God never said they couldn't touch it. That's her addition to the Lord's commands. As if she wants to raise the bar on herself to make a new man-made tradition. We shouldn't just eat it. We can't even touch it. She adds to God's commands. But on the other hand, while she's adding over here, she minimizes God's generosity and his kind provision from allowing them to eat from any tree that they like but one. The way that this is phrased in verse 2 and 3, the emphasis is not on what they get to do, all they get to do, what they can do, what they're given freely to do, but the one thing that they cannot do, the one thing that is prohibited, which presents God as far more harsh and repressive than he actually is. I think that Eve speaks like this, adding, minimizing, is evidence that though she's not fallen prey to the serpent's lies yet, she has begun down the road. And she is doing already what she should not be doing. Notice, though, also, at the end of verse 3, she said, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Remember what God said? Don't eat of it, because the day you eat of it, you will die. Surely die. That's what the Hebrew says, die. And the serpent even says that in verse 4. Did God actually say, you will not surely die? The serpent knows God's commands better than Eve does. He knows it's die. And she just has one die. He's got two, just like God said there was going to be. And so there might even be a minimization of the penalty or the judgment for breaking the Lord's commands here. We'll see how the serpent responds in verse 4 and 5. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Once again, here comes the sneaky serpent-like slithering theologian to explain all things divine. He knows the thoughts and intentions of God's heart, and he is eager to tell Eve what God is all about. What was once subtle and sneaky, notice, is now blatantly contradictory. God said, the day you eat of it, you'll die. You will not surely die. Notice, the very first doctrine denied by the serpent is judgment. How modern of Satan. Who knew that even back then in the garden, he was such a modern individual, denying the very wrath of God that would then, in the subsequent centuries and millennia, continue to be denied by all who hate God? It starts here. Then in language, notice, filled with promises about what she could become, the serpent mentions nothing about what she could lose. Isn't this so like Satan? He never comes out and tells it like it is. Never will you be tempted with exact precision and correct language. Never. He never does this. He always lies to us because he's been a liar from the beginning. Jesus says, holding out a promise of something pleasant and appealing while hiding the consequences of indulging. You won't die. Just look at all that you have. You could be like God. Has she forgotten that she's already like God, made in his very image and likeness? He comes to trick her, saying, what you already have, you don't have, and I can give it to you, and all you need to do to get what you really want is to disobey God, listen to me, and you'll have your heart's desire. When literally she already has it. This is craftiness on full display. Blatantly contradicting God, holding out empty promises, makes no mention of consequences, and in mentioning that Eve could be like God, it's as if the serpent wants to convince Eve that God is holding her back from what she truly could be. As if God is the oppressor, she's the oppressed, and she must break free of this yoke to become the female that she must be. Her full potential is not going to be found under God's protection, but in her own freedom. And we know that true freedom is not found in doing whatever you want to do. We call that slavery. The true freedom is obeying the Lord and running in the way of his commands. This again is so modern. Who knew that these very words would be the essence of what we call extreme feminism today? That Eve is being repressed and oppressed, not by male here, but by God himself, the ultimate oppressor that she must relieve herself from and break free from. This is subtle and sneaky and unashamedly defiant. So look at what all happens from this in the next heading, the sin, verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, do not miss this, who was with her. And he ate. You notice the pace? Verse 1 to 5 were kind of like slow motion. The pace in verse 6, with her own temptation and internal thoughts, because this is what we're reading. The serpent's now departed from view. Verse 6 is Eve's internal thought life. It gets real rapid and quick. It's as if the slow motion temptation is almost foggy and you don't know what to do, but then when you really come down to it, sin is like wham, bam, 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 bam. It's what sin often feels like. But see the pattern here. Eve saw, Eve desired, Eve took, Eve ate, Eve shared. So simple the act, so hard in the undoing of it. Let's examine these events, this rapid pace. First, Eve saw that the tree was good for food. That's what she said. This is good for food. Remember what God said? So far, up to this point, he's been the sole determiner of all that is good. And he said, that tree is not good for food. But now all of a sudden, Eve, having took the bait from the serpent, casting doubt on God and feeling oppressed, she determines for herself what is good without reference to God at all. And the very thing that he said is not good, she now calls good. And she saw it. How did she decide that it was good? Next, Eve saw The tree was a delight to the eyes. I think this means what it means. We're not being tricked by Moses here writing these things. The tree was beautiful. The tree was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was like those alpine peaks that I mentioned earlier. It was stunning to see. You think, well, why would God place a tree so pretty? How cruel. Goodness, people, wasn't everything in a pre-fall world this stunning and this breathtaking? Of course it was. She just happened to focus on the one thing she couldn't have, then its beauty allured her to the wrong direction. And so she is tricked into thinking that she can enjoy the gift without reference to the giver. It's a delight to the eyes. Next, Eve saw, third time now, her eyes matter. She saw that the tree could make her wise. So not only is Eve beginning to feel repressed as if God were holding out on her the thing she most needed, but now she convinces herself that the thing that she needs the most in order to become the woman that she must become is wisdom, not God. It is good for food, a delight to the eyes, and this will make me wise. And after she saw this, she took, she ate, and she shared with her husband. Tragic gets at what this is like, but it doesn't say enough, does it? I don't know if words exist to get at the disgusting vileness of what we're seeing in the text here. I mean, look at this pattern. It's the exact same pattern. No wonder why John the Apostle in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 lists three big sins. They started here. The lust of the flesh. Eve said it was good for food. She wanted it in her. The desire of the eyes. It was pleasing to the sight. And the pride of life. This could make me wise and set me above my peers. If we don't fight our eyes, we will repeat Genesis 3. That's the pattern. If we don't fight what we look at, 5 things will happen. 1, we'll convince ourselves that the sin we're looking at is good. 2, we'll begin delighting in this sinful thing. 3, we'll explore the possibilities of indulging privately in our own mind and the enjoyment that that would bring. 4, we'll commit these sins in actual practice. And 5, you do those 4 long enough, you'll eventually invite other people in to join your fun. And it all started with what she was looking at. Do you care about what you see? If you look long enough, you won't. You'll love what you see if you look long enough. What you see really, really matters. What you allow yourself to enter into the eyes. This is why Jesus said it's the window to the soul. But lest we just throw Eve under the bus and back up and go forward and back up and go forward, notice Adam's greater failure. Where was he? I'm sure you've heard sermons exonerating Adam from all guilt. We don't even know where he was. Verse 6, he was with her. The whole time, the dialogue temptation is going on between the serpent and Eve. Adam's right there, and he does nothing. He's the head of this new family. He's got the responsibility to provide, to protect physically, spiritually. He should have been called the snake crusher for killing the snake right here, but he didn't. and he failed as a man. And he failed his wife as a husband. He took and he ate, just like she took and ate. No protest. See what this all leads to, our last point, the fall or the shame. Verse 7. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. The results of their eating in verse 7 are just as rapid as we saw the sin itself in verse 6. All of this happens quick. It happens quick. The temptation is foggy and slow motion, and yet once the eyes see and start to delight and you start to partake and indulge and share, it goes rapidly in its descent. Their eyes were opened. Now they knew they were naked, and they covered themselves with fig leaves. Notice, by the way, the only fruit mentioned in this whole chapter is a fig. That then is probably likely that that was the fruit that they ate, not an apple. That's a guess. It could have been a pineapple. It could have been a banana. That's the extent of my fruit knowledge. But notice the contrast. Nakedness was once a thing of glory. Freely known, freely at peace. Totally. No shame. As chapter 2 ends in verse 25, naked and not ashamed. The very thing that was once a sign of how healthy their marriage was has now become the thing that they are fighting to cover up. Who are they covering from here? It doesn't mention. I think implied it's two parties. They're firstly trying to hide from each other because they're now ashamed of being naked. And we'll see in verse 8, Lord willing, next week that they're hiding from God. Some point out here, in somewhat foolish of ways, that the serpent was right. They didn't die on the day they ate the fruit. He said their eyes would be opened, and they were opened. See, the serpent was right. God is the ultimate oppressor, that we must relieve ourselves of the burden. Wrong. There's something worse than physical death. Remember, our view so far in this series, the time we've been in it, we've taken the angle that I think is correct, and hopefully you've been persuaded at this, that Eden was not a farm and Adam was not the first farmer. The garden was the holy place inside the bigger temple that was Eden. The holy place is the garden. In this first temple, God's presence was known. Verse 8 shows us a bit of a pattern, that it was the pattern of God and the man and woman to walk in the cool of the day. His direct presence. What is removed after they eat? His direct presence. They're no longer allowed into the holy place. They're banished from it with flaming swords held by cherubim. To be banished from the presence of the Lord forever is worse than physical death. On the day they ate it, they died. This is evidence of that, and evidence that this is all temple language being used, that the wandering Israelites reading this for the first time would have quickly understood. Well, the deed has been done. There is now no way back. This is not the way it's supposed to be. There are two ways to hear this sermon today. I'm wondering which one you're doing right now. There's a doctrinal way, and there's a very boots on the ground level way, personal way. The doctrinal way is right and good and beautiful and true. This is the story of original sin. This is where we get, theologically speaking, the doctrine of original sin. The sin of our first parents in denying God, in taking the fruit, wanting to be like God in doing so, sinned, fell from their original condition of righteousness into an estate of death, misery, and ruin that then spread to all their descendants that we inherit upon conception. That's the doctrine of original sin, and that's the story that we just went over. That's wonderfully true. But there's another way to read this story that perhaps we need to linger on today. The passage we just went over is the story of every sin. It's not just original sin, not just Adam and Eve's sin. This is the story of every sin. This is the story of why I sin. This is the story of why you sin. This is the story of why every sin happens, because every sin follows this same sin pattern. Our first parents saw, desired, took, ate, and shared. That's the pattern. It's the same for them as it is for us. And Paul would have us believe one of those obscure references that people don't put on Hallmark cards, 2 Corinthians 2:11, lest we be outwitted, you need to know the devices of Satan. We need to know the pattern of sin, to know its danger, to know its deceit, to know its destruction, to know its vileness, and to feel the weight of it. So let's get real practical and I'm going to ask some really hard questions so that you're not safely just keeping this text at a distance from your personal life and habits. Are any of you right now, question 1, in the midst of this pattern? Seeing, desiring, taking, indulging, sharing. Are any of you right now feeling the fog of those 5 steps? You've perhaps allowed something to come into your life that you have not, knowing it's not good for you, that it crosses lines. You've allowed it to exist, and you've been unwilling to say no to this, and you've consciously, unconsciously let it linger and allowed it to be there, like, oh, it's not going to hurt anything. It's one way to ask the question. Perhaps another way to ask it is a bit more pointed. Are any of you right now making plans to get blackout drunk at a certain date because you know you'll be alone that date? Are any of you right now, have you already made plans to meet up with someone who's not your wife or husband for an adulterous affair? Or have you made plans at the upcoming prayer meeting that you're going to share just a little bit too much about your friend's struggles because you really, really like to gossip, and you're going to clothe it all in prayer request? Or maybe someone has mistreated you for so long and you've had it so much that you're so sick of it that you're just ready to burst out and go full rage monster on them soon. And you're plotting how to do this in front of everyone so they get what's coming to them. Or is your sin more subtle? Have you been indulging in sin privately for years and no one knows? We could say it all like that. There's a third way to say it. Did you do this last night and somehow find yourself here this morning not knowing what to do. Oh my gosh, this guy's talking directly to me. I don't even know him. How does he know here at 11 a.m. what I did at 2 a.m.? God knows, and he was there. When you saw, desired, took, indulged, and shared. And you're now feeling the weight and the vileness of this. And maybe in our songs about come ye sinners, you're like, I can't sing that because it just hits too close to me because I know what a sinner I am right now. And I just feel too guilty to open my mouth in song and praise God that he saves sinners because I like sin way too much. In that light, I have no idea why this chapter has been historically referred to as the fall. I mean, I get it. Original condition, we fell. No one falls into sin. We sin willingly because we want to. We jump into it. This should be called the jump out of our original condition. Willing and signed. So do you fit into any of those categories? That's the question. Do you fit into the category of one that you're in the midst of this pattern and you feel the fog right now? Or the category of you're planning to engage in this because you've already gone through the pattern and you've signed on the dotted line, I'm going to do this? Or are you in the category, I've already done that and I'm now feeling the consequences of it. I took the bait. I was never told that it would ruin my life and ruin so many others' lives near me. And now I feel the guilt of it, and I don't know what to do with my guilt. I just want to cover myself up in an act of self-atonement, fig leaves that can't cover. This passage needs to land on us, that we would not only know the sinfulness of sin, but we would know the hope that there is for sinners. It's true, as I said before, the deed has been done, and there is now no way back. But in the sovereign mercy of God, you know what there is? There's a way forward. Curious, isn't that? As we see down through redemptive history, these words, take and eat. The serpent, take, eat. Eve took, ate. Gave to Adam, he took and ate. These words would one day be transformed into words of salvation at the upper room when Jesus would offer his own body and blood and say, take and eat. But it wouldn't happen like that until he would taste death for sinners, not being a sinner himself. In great love, he did this for us. The way forward is not around sin, or under sin, or over sin, as if we're just going to ignore this. The way forward for sinners from a fallen world like Genesis 3 is through sin. It's through the mess of it, through the guilt of it, through the destruction of it, through the ruin and the misery of it. It's right through it, because Jesus embraced it for all who would ever believe in him. His sacrifice satisfied the Father's wrath that was coming to us for doing this. Did you notice the same way Eve was tempted, Jesus was tempted in his own life? Remember that moment? He's in the wilderness for 40 days. Satan comes to him with 3 sneaky tricks. The same 3 sneaky tricks that Eve got. Lust of the flesh. Turn these stones into bread, Jesus. We know you're hungry. Desire of the eyes. Takes him up to the top of the temple. Shows him the whole world. This could be yours if you just worship me. Again, it's already Jesus's. Eve already was like God. The deception is trying to trick us into thinking we don't already have what we most need. And lastly, the pride of life. Jump off the temple, Jesus. Let the angelic host come catch you and pop you down right in the middle of town square so everyone can see who you are and everyone believes in you. While our first parents failed, while we fail, Jesus triumphed. He's replaying the story in the first garden in his own life that would lead to a different garden where he would sweat drops of blood by thinking about what was coming. In his triumph, sinners have hope. It's not that we have done such monumental things. It's just that by believing in Jesus, we've been united to him, and his victory, all of a sudden, lo and behold, becomes our victory, and we are triumphant in his triumph forever. And he will be praised. And at the cross, the snake's fangs were removed. He might kill us. There's hope for sinners only in the Savior.